All right, we'll get started. Thank you for joining me today. Good afternoon. It's a little snowy here in Washington, D.C. They can't seem to handle snow here like we do in Western New York and the Southern Tier. So there's a lot of people struggling to get in and out of the Capitol. But I wanted to take some time to discuss my priorities for this Congress and how I plan to work with my Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives and in the Senate to deliver on the mandate that the American people sent us here to work on. A little while ago, I left the House chamber where we held a joint session of Congress to historically certify the Electoral College votes for President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. This was a monumental and exciting moment in our history because it means we are one step closer to them taking office on January 20th. We have an awful lot of work ahead of us in order to steer America back on the right track. We must rein in the federal government so that we can lower costs for hardworking families. That's something that all of us in the last election, campaigned on and worked on, that we would get prices back under control. We would rein in this drastic inflation that our country has suffered under for the last 3.5 years. We must rein in the federal government so that we can lower those costs for hardworking families, to secure our borders as well, to protect the freedoms of individuals, and to restore American energy independence and end the woke policies of the left that are holding our country back from really enjoying the potential that our next generations deserve. Last Friday, the 119th Congress was sworn in, and we stayed here to work through Saturday to map out our plan for swiftly enacting President Trump's agenda following his inauguration on January 20th, 2 weeks from today. With President Trump headed back into the White House and Republicans controlling the majority in both the House and the U.S. Senate, we have a historic opportunity to deliver real and meaningful change that the American people voted for. That is the mandate that the American people wanted. We have that both in the popular vote by a wide margin, as well as the Electoral College. And it's my sincere hope that there are some common sense proposals that we put forward, that even Democrats who want to heed the wishes of the American people, that they will come across the aisle and we can work in a bipartisan fashion to get the country going back in the right direction. But make no mistake, we are going to deliver with or without that bipartisan cooperation. We're not going to be bogged down by partisan games and witch hunt investigations that they use to try to derail the first Trump presidency. We are united and we are clear-eyed in our mission to deliver real change. There's a new sense of energy and urgency at the Capitol among my colleagues, and we are cooperating very closely with President Trump and the transition team to ensure that his first 100 days are hugely successful. If President Trump succeeds, it's very simple. America succeeds. I couldn't be more honored and excited to do this work on behalf of the residents of the 23rd Congressional District, and I'm very honored for their overwhelming support in the last election. And I take that very seriously, representing 9 counties in Western New York and the Southern Tier. Our vast district's even bigger in the 119th Congress. Now, as I said, it has 9 counties with the inclusion now of Tioga County to the east and part of Niagara County as well entering the district. And for the first time since 2018, New Yorkers have a Republican on the Powerful Energy and Commerce Committee. I was elected to that committee several weeks ago. That will give our region a strong voice and a seat at the table on critical issues like energy, healthcare, manufacturing, and rural broadband initiatives. And nearly every piece of legislation on President Trump's early agenda will go through the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I'm thrilled that Western New York and the Southern Tier will have a seat at that table to tackle these issues that are so important to our region and to our nation. January 20th can't come soon enough. I'm very eager to get to work. My colleagues join me in that spirit. And even today, just 2 weeks before his last day in office, President Biden is inflicting harm on our nation's energy supply and driving up costs by restricting offshore drilling with more radical new Green Deal policies. That all changes immediately the moment that President Trump is sworn into office again. Under President Trump's leadership and with the help of a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, America can enter a new golden age of prosperity and strength. America can enter a new era of American energy dominance as well. But I really thank you for being here with me today. And now I will open the floor to questions. If you want to just do the raise your hand function, and we'll call on people. Don't be so shy.
Hello?
Yes. Who do we got?
Greg Bacon from the Observer and Post Journal.
Hi, Greg. Great to have you with us.
Glad to be here. Specifically, what are some goals you have for the Southern Tier? And I'm thinking of Chautauqua and Cattaraugus County in particular.
Well, we look to continue to do the good work that we've done the last 2 years in the Southern Tier. I think we're working with our local leadership to try to encourage as many new businesses and manufacturing opportunities that we can. I want to continue the progress. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the bipartisan cooperation on the Farm Bill that I had hoped for. We have excellent legislation built into the base text of the Farm Bill that we reported out of the Agriculture Committee. We're going to reintroduce those bills this week, particularly something like the Careers Act, which would increase workforce development in our rural communities. It would expand an existing grant program, the RISE Grants program, that would create more funding opportunities for local educational partners to work with local businesses, manufacturers, healthcare initiatives to create those job opportunities and educate the workforce for the job opportunities that currently exist in the area. That's something that we're going to continue working on. The Farm Bill is going to obviously have a different view, but it's something we have to get done. We have a 1-year extension of the old Farm Bill. I'd like to see some real progress there. G.T. Thompson, our congressman to the south in Pennsylvania, my neighbor, is the chairman of the Agriculture Committee. He understands our ag needs as well, and was a great partner for me when I was on the Ag Committee last Congress. So those are things in particular that we're working on. We're also working, and going to continue the work we've done for Chautauqua Lake. The Army Corps of Engineers study has started. We have to continue to fight for more funding for priorities for Chautauqua Lake. It's something that I'm very dedicated to in my time in Congress. But we will be, continuing the momentum that we've created in the first Congress, and now with more cooperation at the Senate level and the White House on our side, I think we can do even more.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Greg.
Congressman, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
It's Ron from Channel 2.
Ron, how are you?
Good. Okay. I just wanted to ask, I know this is kind of out of left field, so I apologize, but I did send something to Grace about this. The Buffalo News came out with a story today. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. Dan Herbeck interviewed Thomas Homan, who is the Trump administration's border czar. And the whole question of the green light law came up, which I know you've been concerned about in the past as well. But anyway, Mr. Homan, when he talked to Dan Herbeck, said they asked if it's possible that federal officials would block cars and trucks with New York license plates from entering the U.S. from Canada until New York begins sharing DMV information. And according to Mr. Herbeck, this was a well-connected law enforcement official telling a reporter such a scenario is under serious consideration by Homeland Security. He says Homan did not rule out the possibility, declining to confirm or deny that report. So I know I'm hitting you from left field here, but when you hear things like that, obviously you have a lot of border residents here. What's your response?
Well, I think it just brings light to the gravity of the situation. And I hope you all report on this, because while I don't know if Mr. Homan said that or did not say that, I have not discussed that with him. But the northern border is something that you've all heard me talk about time and again, about how this is the next front in this border war. We've seen 1,000+% increase in illegal crossings and apprehensions at the northern border. And New York State, because they insisted on a driver's license for a legal immigrant program and made that law in New York, and this needs a lot of attention. They have prevented federal law enforcement partners from accessing the New York State DMV database. And last summer, if you remember, Ron, the Buffalo ICE office apprehended a heinous killer from Peru. He got him just on the other side of my district, just outside of my district in Endicott, in Broome County. And this was a long-standing manhunt, because this was someone that was such a heinous killer that he had killed 23 people. He was wanted for 23 murders in Peru, had his victims' names tattooed on his body, driving around in a car with New York plates. The Buffalo ICE officials that I've spoken with said that that investigation was deeply hampered because New York would not cooperate. I can't imagine most other states refusing to cooperate with federal officials when they're trying to do something to make all of our citizens safer and get a cold-blooded killer off the streets. So while that proposal, that quote seems to be an extreme measure, I don't know what it has got to be to make Kathy Hochul and the officials in Albany to wake up that we've got a real crisis on our hands. And they need to work with our federal law enforcement partners as we're trying to find the criminal element right off the bat within the population that is here illegally and set the table to get them out of this country. There needs to be broad-based cooperation. I have signed on to legislation in the last Congress, and I'm sure it'll be reintroduced very soon with Congresswoman Tenney to deny federal funds to states that do not cooperate with this sort of data sharing. I mean, this should be a hand-in-glove relationship. It should not be an adversarial relationship. And I have to ask out loud the question of state officials, whose side are you on if you're not working with our federal law enforcement partners to try to make our community safer? So I hope that it doesn't get to this. I hope we have more of a broad-based cooperation. But, the laws of New York, I don't know what constituency they think they're serving, but they are making New Yorkers less safe by not cooperating with our federal law enforcement officials. That has to happen. We cannot secure the northern border. We cannot continue to put pressure on the Canadian government to tighten their own immigration dilemmas if New York will not cooperate with the federal government of the United States of America. This is about keeping our community safe. And in a border community like Western New York is, where we have, 4 bridge crossings, this should be top of mind to people in Western New York in the Southern Tier. And I will continue to use any leverage I have in conversations to try to continue to push for that, because this is, it's an abomination that we have people that are putting their lives on the line to keep the streets safer, and they don't have the tools to know what car they're approaching because they can't run the tag. It's absurd.
But just to follow up real quick, could New York State residents be caught in the middle here? That's the.
Well, New York State residents need to call their governor. They need to talk to their state legislative partners, because what we're talking about in terms of getting the criminal element of the illegal immigration population out of this country is common sense. And if New York's going to stand in the way of common sense, that's a serious problem. The governor's from Buffalo. She understands, because of the proximity to the borders, as to what sort of dangerous free flow can be coming through. I mean, we have to have data cooperation between our law enforcement partners. I think that this comment, and I have not read the story by the Buffalo News, but it seems to be an extreme measure. Obviously, the rights of U.S. citizens are tantamount. I think that we need to always be working to make sure that we have as much free flow at that border as possible. And I'm a huge proponent of this binational economy that we have, but we have to have safeguards and we have to protect our communities. And if we can't run the DMV database for U.S. Border Patrol, you're putting those officers' lives in danger, and you're putting your communities in danger. So while I can't speak to the comments, I haven't had those those conversations with Tom Homan or anyone in the incoming administration. There is going to be pressure on the state of New York to get with the program and understand what's on the line here.
Congressman Rick Miller from the Olean Star.
Rick, great to be with you.
Thank you. Say, what role do you see for yourself on the Energy Committee to promote Southern Tier energy interests?
Well, Rick, as you know, as someone that has covered me since I started as a candidate for Congress, I sought this committee from the time I started running for Congress. It's got the broadest jurisdiction of any committee in the House of Representatives. It's all of energy policy, it's all of telecommunications, and it's all of healthcare. And I started looking at this committee because we look at the fact that we represent in this district the Marcellus Shale. We also represent, unfortunately, the same counties that have that Marcellus Shale are some of the poorest counties in New York year in and year out. New York State has stolen the opportunity that God has given us. We have the Saudi Arabia of natural gas under our feet. The Pennsylvania neighbors have harnessed that opportunity and have transformed their economy. They've created good paying jobs and opportunities for generations. And New York has squandered that because a radical environmental left based out of New York City killed that opportunity off. No one wanted to frack in Manhattan. No one wanted to frack in in Brooklyn. No one wanted to frack in Queens, but we have the Marcellus Shale right under our feet in the Southern Tier. Those jobs would be welcome. They would transform our economy and they would bring us to the next level. I obviously want to dig into energy issues. I'm waiting for my subcommittee assignments, but the broadness of the jurisdiction of the committee, you have to be adept at any of those issues. So, myself, my staff, we're working with, stakeholders and partners, and I have set the table for this committee my entire time in Congress. Most of the legislation I sponsored had jurisdiction in the energy and commerce field. And I will continue to find any way possible, whether it's federal workarounds, preemption, whatever we can get our hands on to basically create more energy freedom for the people of the state of New York. I mean, we have a state government who, in their wisdom, has banned hookups to new build homes to natural gas. It's a pretty cold climate. And our energy providers, the electrical companies that I've met with, say they don't have any ability to put more energy in the grid on the electrical side of things. Nor do we have many citizens that are in line to purchase geothermal heat units for their homes. Natural gas is the clean alternative that gets us to the next level. We all want a cleaner economy. We all want a cleaner world, but we have to follow the technology. And we cannot shackle our taxpayers in the name of the Green New Deal religion that so many on the left have promoted for the last several years. While China and India and bad actors in the Far East burn the filthiest coal they can get their hands on. I mean, it's a fool's errand to do that. And we have to have choice, and we have to have reality and practicality. Our cars today are cleaner than the cars were 10 years ago, and those cars were cleaner than the cars that were 10 years before that. Technology will continue to improve, but the internal combustion engine is not going anywhere. And we are not going to stop heating our homes with natural gas. We're not going to stop using natural gas stoves. This is based on them trying to pander to a woke ideology. And the American people spoke pretty loud and clear with their votes in this last election, in the last several elections for that matter, that they're kind of done with it. We want common sense solutions that move our future forward. And we can do that while being good stewards of the environment. We can harness this natural gas while being good stewards of the environment. And, we look at kind of the Northeast as a whole, because now I'll be the only member from the Northeastern states on this committee. So many of our New England states are forced to purchase liquefied natural gas from Russia. We're putting money in the pockets of our foreign adversaries. And we have a plethora of this LNG, and President Biden has done everything he can to slow down and stop production and exportation of that liquefied natural gas. We should be exporting that around the world and not force our European allies to have to depend on it. But unfortunately, because of New York law, they have forced the stopping pipelines, important pipeline projects that would allow us to get clean natural gas to the New England states and allow them to heat their homes with American energy rather than Russian. We need to put all possible solutions on the table to preempt these things and to get back in the business of using American fuel and heating our homes with it.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Rick. Any other questions out there?
Congressman, this is Natalie Abruzzo with WSKG News.
How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Doing great.
So my question is regarding PFAS or forever chemicals. Can you speak a little bit about what the work in the incoming administration and the 119th Congress is going to be to being stewards of environmental issues here, since you were talking about that with the energy question and answer. What is going to happen to help protect our air, our water, our soil from these forever chemicals? And specifically speaking in the Southern Tier, where you represent a large swath of people.
Well, I haven't had any discussions with the incoming administration on what their priorities are. I am excited about the fact that Lee Zeldin, someone that's no stranger to anyone on this call, is the incoming EPA administrator and is someone that I'm trusting that, given my committee assignment, we'll be working very closely with. We want to be great stewards of the environment while at the same time doing what we know we can do. We can continue to grow our economy. We know we can continue to, create great opportunities for our children and our grandchildren, while at the same time being good stewards of the environment. We know we can do it cleaner in the United States. We know we do function with a much more emphasis on environmental impacts than other parts of the world. But it doesn't mean you have to shut down future growth in our economy to do both. You can have it both ways, but you can't set regulations so stringent that you prevent those future opportunities. You have to follow the technology. While down the road we might get into more specific questions with the PFAS question is you brought up, but I would await conversations with the incoming EPA administrator. Next, we're going to go to Jim Ekstrom from Olean Times-Herald.
Yeah. Hello, Congressman.
How are you?
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
Pleasure.
I wanted to ask you for comment on the news just today regarding the pretty large funding that goes to West State Street in Olean regarding the reconstruction of that West State Street corridor. You were mentioned as helping to push that through in terms of the funding.
Well, we want to continue to deliver for Olean. I mean, important projects will help grow our downtown, and I'm thrilled that they're going to be able to move ahead with that expansion. So look forward to being back there again real soon.
All right, thank you.
Natalie. Or no, we already talked.
Yeah, you can let somebody else go.
I'm looking at hands up, and I'm also looking at the same time. Joseph.
Congressman Langworthy, this is Joe Mason from WETM. How are you?
I'm doing great, Joe.
Glad to hear it. So my only question for you is, it's been a divisive campaign, this past campaign, with your race and, of course, the presidential race. Is unity and unifying the country a priority of the president and yourself heading into the new year?
Well, absolutely. I think we have a clear, decisive election. The presidential election, where President Trump won the popular vote by a wide margin, but also a much larger electoral college total than he received in 2016 even. And I think that sets the table very nicely. You see today, the certification of the election results, there was no question marks. There was no doubt to the outcome. The good thing, there was a decisive election. And now President Trump will roll out his agenda. I'm very much eagerly awaiting. I'll actually be visiting with him at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday as he's meeting with the New York delegation, and looking forward to his inaugural address as he lays out his vision for the first 100 days. But I also know that we've already gotten to work, and we are working through the budget reconciliation process, which is something that you can do with an incoming administration when all parties control the same majorities. And we spent the all day Saturday as House Republicans mapping out those priorities and how can we get the country back on track? How can we get spending under control? We can't lose sight of the fact that we are now as a nation nearly $36 trillion in debt. And that is a legacy that we cannot afford to leave to our children and our grandchildren. We have to be capable of meeting this moment that we've been given by the American people, meeting this moment in history that we were the ones to bend the curve, to start to retire this debt, to get it going in the right direction. I mean, we've had unbudgeted spending in the last administration that is almost unrivaled at a time that didn't include massive wars. And we're in an indebtedness now that is very similar to the indebtedness that we were in proportionately after World War II. And that is weighing down the U.S. economy and our potential for a brighter future. So we are going to take those parameters into focus right away, and having to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollar, to seal the southern border, to defend the northern border, to end the illegal immigration crisis in this country, and to get the economy growing again in a way where the American people feel it at their, the times that a husband and a wife are sitting at the kitchen table figuring out their bills. Because I don't care what statistic the administration under President Biden has put out there saying that inflation's come down. No one believes that. Metrics might have said that they've gone down. The growth in increases in pricing has curbed, but the prices are taking the middle class out of the game. They've been pinched harder than they ever have before. A trip to the grocery store is still a major economic moment in a family's month at this point. And that's something that we have to keep in mind always. And that's why I spend as much time as I do work in the district, because you have to stay in touch with the people that sent you here to do the job. So we have a huge charge to keep. And I know President Trump is laser focused on achieving the promises that he laid out for the American people. We need to, continue on the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that President Trump enacted in his first term. We have to renew those tax provisions and make as many of them as permanent as possible. There's nothing that would be a bigger wet blanket on this economy and our nation's growth than a double-digit tax increase. And Americans had more money in their pockets once that tax break was put in place. And we need to keep it that way because people need certainty. Businesses need certainty. Small businesses need regulatory relief and tax certainty. And that's all part of what we're working on here as we get into the new year. I do believe there are common sense Democrats that, while they'll be the loyal minority, we're all Americans and we all need this country to succeed. I don't sense the vitriol towards President Trump from the left that he experienced in his first term. I think the fact he won the popular vote is a huge piece of that, because try as they might to say he was a threat to the country, the American people overwhelmingly elected him. Even if you look at our own state of New York, which every presidential Republican nominee has gotten blown out in, President Trump only lost New York by 11 points, and New York had a closer presidential election than the state of Texas did, if that puts any context to it. And Democrats were trying to sell that they were kind of close in Texas, but New York was closer than Texas was. So I think that there is going to be a period where hopefully we get some cooperation. And we got to give everyone the benefit of the doubt going in. Republicans are in the majority. They run the committees, and we have to do what we said we were going to do now that we have the power on January 20th.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Western New York News Now.
Hello, Congressman. Thank you. We're currently entering rather unprecedented waters, obviously, with the president-elect currently scheduled to be sentenced in New York on Friday on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. And now a common defense against these charges was that the law was being unfairly applied in this case and that the charges in question are not generally enforced as they were against the president-elect. Do you agree with the argument that there are extant laws that are not meant to be prosecuted? And if so, do you intend on using your position as a lawmaker over these next couple of years to take action on removing any such laws to prevent their misapplication?
Well, as you get into that case that Alvin Bragg prosecuted against President Trump, there's no other American that would have faced that trial. It was a kangaroo court. It was a rigged system. They said a jury that President Trump could not get a fair shake. They wouldn't entertain any ideas to move it out of Manhattan. This was set up so that they could declare President Trump was a convicted felon. But guess what? The American people didn't care. They saw right through the political shenanigans that went on. And Alvin Bragg is someone that won't prosecute violent crimes committed against citizens of Manhattan, but he spent millions of dollars in taxpayer resources prosecuting and persecuting the next president of the United States. What should happen here is Kathy Hochul should do the right thing in the name of unity for the American people. And she should pardon President Trump for these supposed crimes, because this is a distraction from the important work that the American people have to do. And I think that is what she should strongly consider, issuing that pardon so that we can all turn the page. It's a new year ahead. There can be a bipartisan cooperation. The American people fully believe that it was a hyper-political case that was done so to politically harm the now president-elect. And there's only one person that has the power to make that go away, and that's Kathy Hochul. So I know she got on the phone with President Trump within days of him being elected and said she wanted to work together. A great way to show that New York wants to work together would be for her to use her powers to shut this down, because the Manhattan DA's office is an embarrassment to the people of the state of New York. They refuse to do what's right in terms of law and order, in terms of protecting citizens against crimes on a daily basis in that city. Alvin Bragg came into office with a memo listing all the crimes they would no longer prosecute in Manhattan, crimes that are on the books. Yet they found outlandish charges to draw against the now president-elect. So I hope Kathy Hochul will listen and will do what's right and pardon President Trump for these actions. I think we've only got one more hand up, and that is Chris.
Hi, Congressman. Do you see any opportunities to support the rail industry in the new Congress? Obviously, the district has Alstom and Hornell and the new Siemens plant planned in the Elmira area. So just any transportation initiatives that could boost those workforces or those projects in particular?
Well, there's an awful lot of unspent money in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that President Biden enacted in his first term. The one thing that I think even the Biden administration would probably admit that they've failed on is getting a lot of those projects moving and out the door. In the Siemens plant that is manufacturing those rail cars, that's part of that initiative. But we've got to have good projects that are common sense, and hopefully some of those monies that are unspent can be used in ways, to move our infrastructure forward in a permanent basis. Our rail infrastructure on a passenger level in our state is an abomination. I mean, it is not something that upstate New Yorkers, use widely, because it's not predictable, it's not fast, it's not efficient, and it's not really cheap. If you need to go somewhere, it takes longer to go by rail. There's not a lot of support for that across upstate New York, but it's a critical industry, to move our cargo and move our products and manufacturing needs. So I think we have to strengthen our rail infrastructure any way we can. And I'll be prepared to do that on a common sense basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Congressman, it's Natalie Abruzzo again with
Hi.
WSKG. Hello. So I have a two-parter, but it's about something that you recently put out, and it's about the new caucus, the Make America Healthy Again caucus. So I was wondering if you could talk about the work that it will provide that it will do to provide better rural health care and high quality food, and what exactly does that mean? Does that mean continued funding of the SNAP program and programs like the SNAP program or other opportunities and what they are? And then the second part of it really is, how will you bring this back to the Southern tier and what is that timeline going to look like?
Well, our caucus has not met yet. I was asked to serve by a new colleague on the Energy and Commerce Committee, who is one of the founders, John Joyce of Pennsylvania. And he recruited a specific group of members to join this caucus in its infancy. But this is going to work to collaborate with RFK Jr., who we expect to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And there's a lot of the initiatives that he's put forward about America's food supply and the chemicals and the ingredients that we put in that maybe other countries don't. We really need to take a hard look at this and as to why a lot of the decisions have been made, a lot of the regulations have been made over the years by the FDA as to what goes into our kids' food. And that is something that I've been very intrigued by when I've seen interviews and dug into some of the writings of RFK Jr. I think he's onto something clearly. I think that any legislation that would be especially headed towards my Energy and Commerce Committee that would involve some of the initiatives of the Department of Health and Human Services could very well come through that caucus as a clearinghouse of people to review and support or make tweaks as well. But it's not specifically geared towards the SNAP program. The SNAP program is something that obviously will continue and is part of the Farm Bill, which we have to continue to consider and draft a new Farm Bill now. But we do have a great base text to work from that was not enacted because the Senate refused to act in the last Congress. But we have to make sure that we're making decisions not in the best interests of corporations, but in the best interests of our children and their health. And tackling America's obesity problems, and some of these ingredients I think have to be heavily scrutinized. And I think that's what RFK's on to in his mission to make America healthy again, to make sure that our country doesn't suffer from health ramifications based on additives and corners that are being cut by food industries, where we're not putting the healthiest possible food out there for our children, as they don't do some of what we do in this country, in Europe or in other parts of the world, and they don't have some of the same detrimental health outcomes. So that will be something I look forward to being a part of.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much for your time today. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to doing more of these as the calendar is going to keep me in Washington a little more than I'm happy with, but this is a good way for us to have these communications. So thank you very much for signing on. I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great day.